Welcome to this week's episode of Eye on the Tigers. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Hewling. This weekend, soccer and softball will travel, but baseball will have their first conference home series of the season. On top of that, we'll be looking ahead at gymnastics as they prepare for the NCAA regionals. Let's get into it. Next up, we have gymnastics. Last weekend, the gymnastics team competed in the SEC championships in Huntsville. They went in as a 6th seed, they placed 6th overall, and now they're headed to the NCAA regionals. Coach Graba earlier this week expressed his excitement for his team, especially because last year this was an opportunity that didn't present itself.
Just excited to go to a place that we've already competed, and it's a manageable away meet for us. So I think this young team, it'll be good that we've been there before and that it's not a brutal travel schedule for us. However, it is the toughest regional in the country. We did get number one, and we have the SEC champ at home that we're going to have to deal with hopefully on day 2 or on day 3 actually. So, but you know, our girls are just excited for the opportunity, and in a year that we didn't know if we'd have another practice or another meet, it's pretty amazing that we got to this point, and we're gonna be able to compete for the chance to move on in a sudden death tournament.
Andy, we've talked about this gymnastics team and followed them the entire season, and now it's crunch time. What do they need to do if they want to continue with their high-ranking performances in the regional tournament?
Well, they're going to have to stay focused for sure, because their regional is very brutal. I don't think anyone can lie that when they saw that, they had to be a little discouraged, just because they're going up against Alabama and the number 1 team in the country, Oklahoma, along with 2 tough SEC opponents in Arkansas and Missouri. So that's going to be, quite a battle for Auburn to, move on into the NCAA tournament. And that's, it's going to be something that they're up for the task. I know that they can do it, but they're going to have to score high, and it's going to have to be, every performance that they have to stay focused on every rotation throughout every event that they have.
They are going to need maximum focus this weekend, and we've talked about it before. This is a very young team. Last weekend in SEC championships, 16 out of the 24 gymnastics members who competed are either freshmen or sophomores who have never competed in the postseason before. And I think that their success shows a lot about the grit and determination of this team. And there's big names, and 3 Auburn gymnasts were named to SEC All-Honors teams last week. Darian Goborn, Drew Watson, Cassie Stevens, and they're going to be looking to build upon this momentum next week. But we've talked about how important it is for them to fix the tiny mistakes and just focus on their overall outcome. And if they can fix those little mistakes, then the outcome is going to improve based on their previous season performances. So as long as they can continue to keep their head up, and Coach Graba actually talked about how important it was this week for them. They were kind of preparing more by watching tape of the other gymnasts, and so if they can continue to look at that and just base their performances off that, but also not focus too much on them and just kind of keep building themselves up, I think they have a really good chance of succeeding at the regionals next weekend. Next up, we have soccer. Soccer will travel to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama in what will actually be considered a non-conference matchup this season. This comes after their win with a PK last weekend over Louisville, and it marks the 2nd road trip in a row for the soccer team. Andy, the Tigers are now 4 out of 5 in their spring contest. What do they need to do to make that 5 out of 6?
Well, they obviously lost to Alabama last time that they played them, and it was kind of shocking for fans at Auburn that the Tigers weren't able to win that. So I think they'll be coming in with a little bit of revenge, looking to get back against Alabama. And, they've been doing a really good job in the spring season. I think, despite losing to Clemson, they've pulled off wins against Louisville and LSU and Kennesaw State. And I think, they've got to be confident going into this game, and now they just got to put it together and hope that their defense and their offense can come together. And I think someone who can really lead them in this game is Anna Haddock. She's She bosses the midfield. Had a lot of shots in the game against Louisville. They were, she even against LSU had 17 shots on target, which is honestly unheard of for many soccer players. But she's just continuing to lead them, and I think she's someone who can get passes to the forwards and get them into goal.
You mentioned Anna Haddock, and I think another really strong player to watch is Sarah Houchin. She was named top drawer all-team week last week after her performance against Louisville. She scored that PK. She's a great defender, and she really kept her composure when it came down to the wire in that game. And I think that's going to be key for the whole team this weekend, continuing to improve upon their defensive performance. And their defense is very efficient, and their offense also is not afraid to take shots, which has really helped them. And the majority of them are on goal, so that's really positive and an upward trend. But on top of that, Maddie Prohaska, another shutout for her last weekend. So if she can continue that trend, I think that the defensive efforts paired with their aggressive shooting, I think the Tigers have a really good chance of beating the Crimson Tide in a rematch this weekend. Next up, we have softball. Softball will travel to Columbia to take on the Mizzou Tigers this weekend. And last weekend, they competed in the War Eagle Battle, and they split the series. They went 1-1 with both FSU and Kennesaw State. And after Saturday's performance, where the Tigers lost both games, they came back and won both games on Sunday. And Coach Mickey Dean said that this was a completely different team out on the field than he saw the previous day.
Yeah, it was two different ball teams. And it wasn't really skill. It was just how we were handling ourselves, and our reactions and our responses Saturday were not good. And on Sunday, we didn't let things get to us. We talked about, not everybody's going to bat 1,000. Not everybody's going to field 1,000. Not every pitch is going to be perfect. But when you have a bad at bat, you can't let that bad at bat affect the next 3 or 4 hitters in the lineup because of the way you're carrying yourself. Or if we make a mistake in the field, you can't let that affect others. And we did a much better job of that on Sunday.
The Tigers faced some really tough competition last week. They split the series. What do they need to do in order to have a success and win this series against the rival Tigers this weekend?
We've been talking a lot about how they need more offense, and I think that's something that's got to continue this week, is that they've got to put more runs on the board. And even, in the games that they won, they only won them by, 1 run or more. And, it just wasn't a compelling performance from Auburn. It was really close at times, and even winning 2-1 against Florida State. Good gritty win, but still not convincing. I want to see Auburn winning by more runs than that, and they need more offensive production. Defenses held their own for the most part, but I really think the offensive performance is going to continue to propel Auburn to wins.
Yes, you mentioned the offensive performance, and one player I was really impressed with last week was Tyler King. She had a couple multi-hit games, really impressive as a sophomore, and I think that, like we've talked about before, hitting is contagious, and I think that not even with the offense and the defense, but going back even further, this team needs to make sure that they're playing with energy, and they are building each other up, and they can't let each other get down on themselves after a bad at bat or an error in the field. And Coach Dean was saying that in his press conference this week about how once somebody's turn is up, you got to focus on the next person. And this team, it's really going to come down to morale this weekend, I think. And so on top of that, like you said, offense, the defense, they're still doing pretty good with that. But if they can start at the root of everything with just the teamwork and the camaraderie, I think the Tigers have a really good chance of winning the series this weekend. Our last Auburn sport and only home matchup of the weekend is baseball as they host Kentucky. The baseball team was swept last weekend against Ole Miss. They had a couple close games, one of them not too close. But Andy, what do you think the Tigers need to do if they want to bounce back now that they're full swing in conference play?
Well, the sweep against Ole Miss, I thought Auburn played really well in the first 2 games. The last game, it seemed like they almost gave up just because Ole Miss really got going offensively, and it was just a bad day for Jack Owen. And I thought Auburn, it was a game that they were not supposed to win, and really, they played hard, but it's kind of in the crunch time, I think, that they need to, come up big and, get those at-bats and get those runs that they need late in games. Because, I mean, they were in it in game one. They almost, were able to come back and had runners in scoring position, but Ole Miss was able to get out of the inning. So, credit to the Rebels for being able to handle the storm. And Ryan Bliss was a guy I thought that had a really good game, too. He had 2 home runs in the game and really put on a good performance for them.
Yeah, I think Ryan Bliss really had a great performance last week, named Shortstop of the Week award for Brooks Wallace. But another player who I hope is really back this weekend against Kentucky is Judd Ward. And Coach Thompson does believe he's been taking it slow, but he hopes that he will be back in time, too, against the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm more reluctant to throw him right back in there, but he sure has bounced back with a lot more upbeat, and the bat's getting through there a lot better than the first time we tried to bring him back. So I feel pretty good. He run around. He had live at bats yesterday. He did some extra work with Coach Gross off the machine in the outfield. Just moved great. So I really think he's more prepared coming back and being back out there this week versus Kentucky than he was when we brought him back the first time after running into the wall. So I have more optimism, more confidence in Judd starting it back up than I did the first time.
On top of hopefully seeing we're gonna redo it. 3, 2, 1. On top of hopefully seeing Judd Ward back on the field against the Wildcats, I'm looking forward to seeing some more offensive efficiency from the Tigers' big hitters, Bryson Ware, Rankin Woolley. You mentioned Ryan Bliss, Tyler Miller. This Tiger team, they can hit. And last weekend, the bats weren't really swinging against the Rebels, but like you said, that was a very talented Rebels team. The Tigers had to have gone in there knowing that it was going to be a fight. And honestly, I think their first game on Friday night was the most impressive of the series. And if they can keep playing like that and just keep pitching and making it a pitching duel, then I think that that's very impressive, especially when it comes down to SEC play, because they're super competitive, but they just need to make sure that the bats are also swinging and they're looking at smart pitches, and they can't get behind on any counts when it's their turn to throw the ball. And I think that this will be a really good matchup this weekend. SEC play is always exciting, and the Tigers are going to be looking to bounce back after being swept last week. So I think this weekend will prove for 3 good matchups, and the Tigers, if they can just get the bats swinging, I think that's going to be the key to winning the series against Kentucky. Before we get to our weekly pick'ems, the Tigers held an open media day at practice yesterday, and our very own Andy Hewling was able to go watch.
The Auburn Tigers football team held another practice session in Jordan-Hare Stadium today as it gave members of the media a chance to take a look at the Tigers a little bit more. Coach Harsin held a press conference afterward to talk about what he's seen from his team in the first 2 weeks of practice.
Really today was just about operation and execution. That's it. The one thing about scrimmages or games or live work is you get a chance to see how far guys have really come in their preparation, how that applies to practice, how practice applies to scrimmages or live situations, and then that when you go live, it really doesn't lie. You get a chance to see who can tackle, who can make break tackles, and when we get in there and watch the film, we'll get a better look at that. But ultimately, I thought as far as just competing, we did do that. Guys were competing, guys did play hard, guys showed effort. Now it's about how do we clean some of the details up, and then where are we now at this point with our preparation? How far have we come as a staff with our players? Are we doing a good enough job of getting these guys ready to go out there and execute in a moment like we had today? And first glance of that, we've got a ways to go. We've got things that we know we need to work on, and that's okay. As long as we take that mindset into what we have to do moving forward, then we'll have a chance to continue to get better.
The Tigers will continue practices throughout the next several weeks as they gear up for their annual A-Day game, which will be on April 17th right here at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Reporting from Auburn, Alabama, I'm Andy Hewling, Eagle Eye TV.
Andy, what were your takeaways from yesterday's day at practice?
Well, from what I saw, I really like the energy and the intensity that they've brought to practice. All the coaches are very vocal. Harsin is, running around making sure that his players are practicing and doing even just things down to stretching well. And, one thing that I heard him yell is that they need to do perfect reps every time. And he said, it starts right now. And I think it's just showing me that like this team is a completely different energy already. And, I think it's no secret that from what the fans saw on Saturday with the open practice to fans, and that, he's demanding a lot from his players, and he wants to see them growing and developing in the system. And, right now they're taking baby steps. He talked a lot about in his press conference on Thursday night about how he wants to see them operate and execute. And not, he really doesn't have, the guys that he wants yet, but he's still evaluating them and wants to see them handling what he's asking them to do well week in and week out.
You mentioned the high standards that Harsin has, and I'm very excited to see how this football season plays out. Hopefully it'll be a regular season with full stadiums, full capacity, but the Tigers will continue to practice in the offseason as they prepare for A-Day, which will be April 17th. And be sure to tune in to our special preview of Eye on the Tigers next weekend as we look at the off-season sports, including football and basketball. Finally, we have our weekly Pick'em segment. Keeping up with the March Madness trends, this weekend is the Sweet 16. 8 teams will emerge and move on to the Elite 8. So our first matchup of the weekend is Loyola Chicago versus Oregon State. Andy, who do you have?
Well, this is an unexpected battle in the Elite Eight, 2 teams that not many people had in their bracket to make it all the way here. But I'm going to go with Loyola Chicago. I think their energy, and then also, of course, Sister Jean is leading this team. Something spiritual in the waters here, but I'm going to go with Loyola Chicago.
I'm going to have to go with Loyola Chicago as well. They do have elite defensive efficiency. However, Oregon State has won 5 consecutive elimination games, and this tournament is all about surviving and advancing, and if that's not the definition, I don't know what is. So Oregon State does have the potential to beat Loyola Chicago, but I still think Loyola Chicago is going to get this one. Next up, we have Syracuse versus Houston. Who do you have?
Got to go with the Orange and Buddy Boeheim. They are rolling right now. And Houston coming off a little bit of a scare against Rutgers, where honestly they probably could have lost that game. They haven't been as convincing to me in the first couple games. And I think Syracuse is rolling and will have some momentum going into this game. I think they'll knock them off.
I'm excited for this matchup. I think it could be a really close game, and it honestly could go either way. But I'm going to have to go with Houston on this. Throughout the season, they had a really impressive resume, some really successful wins, and very determined. And so I think the Cougars are going to get this win, but it still could go either way. Next up, we have Arkansas versus Oral Roberts. Andy, who do you have?
I'm going to go with Arkansas in this game, and I think Oral Roberts will make it close. I think, the line right now is 6.5, but I think Arkansas will cover that and get this win. They're playing good basketball, and I expect them to maybe have a run at the Final Four potentially.
I agree. I think Arkansas is going to get this win at the beginning of the season. Did not expect to see them here. Also didn't expect to see Oral Roberts, and Oral Roberts' highest free throw shooting percentage in the country. And they're not afraid to make the threes, and they do make a decent amount. So I think they could put up some good competition against the Razorbacks. Next up, we have Alabama versus UCLA. Andy, who do you have?
I'm going to go with UCLA in this game. Alabama is going to be a big threat, especially shooting from 3. And they're the favorites to win this game. But I'm going to go with the Bruins, who have played really well up to this point. They're a sneaky team. You can't take them lightly. And I think they can pull off this upset against a good Alabama team.
I'm going to have to go with Alabama on this. I think the Crimson Tide are rolling right when they need to, and they just are very aggressive defensively. They're great at shooting. 47% of their shots are three-pointers, and I think that's going to be key in the win over the Bruins. Next up, we have Oregon versus USC. Andy, who do you have?
This is an unexpected Pac-12 battle, and the last time that these two teams played, Oregon won by a big margin. And I'm going to go with the Ducks in this game, only based off of because of that previous matchup where Oregon beat them very handily. USC is a good team, and has made a good effort to get here this far. But I think Oregon, after that win against Iowa, they looked really confident and full of energy, and I think they're going to get this win.
I'm going to have to go with Oregon as well. Even though they've dealt with roster inconsistencies throughout the whole season, it hasn't plagued them that much, even though they'll be without their star player in this matchup. So I think the Ducks are going to get this win as well. Next up, we have Michigan versus Florida State. Who do you have?
I'm going to go with Michigan in this game. This should be a good battle between these teams. You know, Florida State's had a good season. Michigan coming off a win against LSU, really close, and they battled hard. And I think they have the potential to make it all the way. They have maybe a meeting with Alabama in the Elite Eight to follow, so we'll see if they win this game, how that plays out if they do face Alabama. But, you know, I favor Michigan in this game, and I think they will win.
Michigan did have a very impressive performance in their win over LSU, but I'm going to have to go with FSU on this. They have the tallest average height in the country, and I think that's going to be really important when it comes to this matchup against the Wolverines, and I think the Seminoles are going to win because of it. Next up, we have Baylor versus Villanova. Andy, who do you have?
I'm going to go with Baylor in this game. Obviously, Villanova is a good team, but I just think without their starting point guard, that's going to be a big issue for them. They've made it this far, but they haven't really come up against competition that can really pose a threat like Baylor can. And I expect the Bears to move on and get to the Elite Eight.
I'm going to have to go with Baylor as well, especially seeing their performance against Auburn earlier this season. Granted, it was an early Auburn team, but Baylor was very dominant in that performance. However, if any team has the chance to beat them, I think it could be Villanova. This team, they have a lot of experience, and especially experience just playing together. So I think that really could come as a strength to them in this matchup, but I do think the Bears are going to get this win. For our final matchup, we have undefeated Gonzaga versus Creighton. Andy, who do you have?
I got to go with Gonzaga again. They're my favorite to win this whole thing. And Creighton's will give them a battle, but Gonzaga has outlasted every opponent that they've played, and also are coming off a huge win against a good Oklahoma team, and they continue to beat the best teams right now by more than 15 points. It's honestly insane what they're doing, and they're just so talented. And Suggs, their point guard, is a phenomenal player, and he leads that team. And I think they're going to roll and keep on going in this NCAA tournament.
I completely agree with everything you said. Gonzaga, very impressive resume, very impressive performances so far, attempting to be the first undefeated champion since Indiana in 1976. But if there is a team left in this tournament that has the chance to beat them, I think it could be Creighton. So this could be a closer game than everybody anticipates, because just like you, a lot of people are hoping and betting that Gonzaga will win the whole thing. So I'm excited for this matchup, possibly the most exciting matchup of the weekend. I think there's a good chance it could be a lot closer than people think. That's all we have for you this week. For more news and sports updates, head to our website at eagleeyeauburn.com or head over to our Twitter at EETV_sports. I'm Delaney Barrow, joined by Andy Healing. Have a great weekend and War Eagle.